Hi, welcome to Cubs and Culture for October 13th, 2018. Just because the Cubs aren't in baseball, aren't alive anymore for the season doesn't mean we can't enjoy some funny stuff. Clayton Kershaw became the first left-handed pitcher ever to give up a home run to a left-handed batter in the postseason, when that batter was also a pitcher, not just a pitcher, a relief pitcher. It's sort of the quintessential Clayton Kershaw absolutely is not himself in the postseason, and hopefully that becomes an exclamation point on his legacy. Because it's so embarrassing. Anyway, I think Brewers won 6-5, whatever. Anyway, we're up to Hamlet, 1948 Best Picture winner. Directed and starring Laurence Olivier. It's often referred to as a love letter or a passion project by Olivier. I prefer to think of it as like a vanity project. This man wanted to play Hamlet, so he made a movie Hamlet. I really dislike this movie. I mean, it's not the story, obviously, because the story's fine. It's Shakespeare. It's not even necessarily how they contracted the play, because about, a quarter of it is removed. 3 whole characters of it, and 3 whole characters are removed, and most of the political aspects of it were removed. And it also adds kind of crappy pop psychology where it's more Freudian than it should be, because they play up the Oedipus complex between between Hamlet and Gertrude. In any case, I really, really dislike this movie. I don't think it is. It's not a movie. It's a film's play, basically. So let me bring up some clips so I can continue complaining about this. Just returning back to baseball for a second. I can't believe how awful. I'll do a theme on this one day. How different Clayton Kershaw is in the postseason versus regular season. He's terrible in the postseason. Every once in a while, he'll rattle off a very good start, like his first start this year, game 1 of the World Series last year. But then for every really good game, he has like 1 absolute implosion, and then 3 mediocre performances. Anyway, I'll see you guys in a sec. So yeah. Okay, so I have 2 huge problems with this, or I guess maybe it's 3. Okay, I'm not entirely sure who this movie is intended for. I feel like Shakespearean nerds or theater nerds will be annoyed with how cut apart the story is, because he again, about a quarter of it's removed. 3 whole characters are removed. The last lines of the play actually had to be transferred to another character because of him just removing the political aspects. Olivier, I mean. And so because of that, it feels like that will annoy people. Then on the other hand, for people who are more interested in cinema, this movie has an absolutely horrific style problem or tonal problem, because as maybe you can't quite see, but the sets and everything are very cavernous and twisting, and it's supposed to be somewhat like German Expressionism, where those represents the indecision on Hamlet part, and then sort of his twisting need and everything like that, which is fine. And then Olivier, as director, uses the camera, something like Hamlet's father, the ghost. And so there's times where there's subjective camera work with twisting and everything. And so he tends to go to free-throwing camera when in transitions between scenes, and so that stuff is okay. The problem with it is once they get into the actual scenes and dialogue and everything, it becomes incredibly stagey and incredibly like a filmed play, as if he just plopped the camera down and just played out the scene. There's very little cross-cutting and there's not a lot of master cutting. This is what I mean by with the camera. And so that's, feels, I guess it's supposed to feel like the father's ghost or the ghost in Hamlet, and it just constantly moves along like that. Which, again, it's fine in and of itself, but then it gets to this stuff, and you're going to zoom into his head. This is To Be or Not to Be, that soliloquy. Where it just, like, he plopped the camera down and he plays out the scene, and there's very little cinematic language in the actual dialogue scenes. And then the other sort of thing that's somewhat annoying on this front is he didn't quite decide, Olivier, how he wanted to handle the soliloquies, which, of course, a soliloquy is just the character talking to themselves or thinking out loud. So what he ended up doing, and it's very, very bizarre, is half of it is like in voiceover, as if the character is actually thinking it, and then some of it's actually vocalized. So there's times in which Olivier is doing this soliloquy, and it's voiceover, and then he'll say a line, just one line of there's like a paragraph, and he'll say like the third line and go back into voiceover, and it's highly distracting. And he uses that technique repeatedly for multiple characters, which doesn't feel cinematic, and it doesn't feel like a stage play then, or a film play. It's this awful hybrid form. And I've watched this movie 2-3 times, and I've never been able to get past this. Now that's sort of the cinematic thing. It doesn't feel like a film to me because of that. It doesn't feel like a film play either. It just feels like a crappy hybrid between the two. So there's that. My other big problem with this is, if you follow the text of Hamlet, it's a little bit ambiguous, Hamlet's actual age, but he's probably about 30 at the end of the play, because of York Skull dates him to being a boy, and then that was about 23 years ago because of what the gravedigger says, so that's about 30 or whatever. And then at the beginning, it also says he just came home from college. So it seems like he's in the 20s, and the time frame isn't all that clear within Hamlet, which is fine. The part is traditionally, though, a guy in his 20s. Olivier here is 40. He filmed this when he was 40 years old, and he looks 40. And it's highly distracting because the part is intended for a much younger man, and I guess I couldn't have gotten over it, except the woman who plays Hamlet's mother, she was 29, which is 11 years younger, and she looks 29. And so there's a whole bunch of scenes, and especially since Olivier played up the Oedipus complex, which is somewhat implicit part of that text. There's scenes in which they're playing together, and it's highly distracting because if you know the play well enough, he's talking to his mother, except she looks 11 years younger than he does, and it's just awful casting. And so I just can't get past the age thing. And apart from that, he does a good Hamlet. It's a good performance, and I can imagine if he filmed this film, even kept everything the same, but filmed it even 5 years earlier when he was 35, it would not be as distracting. And so to me, it's just a shitty movie, because it doesn't feel like a movie, and it doesn't feel like a play. It feels like an awful hybrid. And then even in terms of just the acting, the casting is just not good, and so it comes across as, like I said, like a vanity project. And Olivier just, someone should have pulled him to the side and said, yes, you can play Hamlet, but you cannot cast your mother as a 29-year-old. It's just not a good idea. Anyway, so that's going to be it for Cups and Culture. See you guys tomorrow.